What is the most amount of money that you've been able to generate in a single year?
Ooh, probably a couple of million.
Help us.
1.3. 1.3?
Biggest month I made about 20 grand.
$1 million a month for $12 million a year. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Zero, the CEO here. I'm your host, Isaiah.
And I'm your host, Patrick Brantley.
We're here today in beautiful Midtown Tampa, Florida, and we're doing the unthinkable.
We're going to be interviewing successful entrepreneurs in Tampa, Florida. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what your favorite car today was.
Who am I here with today?
Matt.
Matt.
It is
Hey,
Matt.
Matt. Hey, Matt, is this your Lambo?
It is.
Okay, what do you do for a living, though, for this Lambo?
I'm in the insurance business.
In the insurance business. Okay.
Health insurance.
Health insurance? Okay. What's the most amount of money you made in a single year? Just a rough
1.3.
1.3? Okay. All right, what's the best advice you've ever given to someone?
Best advice I've ever given?
Yeah.
Pretty much the same thing I tell everybody. Anytime I've ever talked to someone like you, is just be honest and treat people right. And karma will get its way to turn it out for you.
Okay. And then what is the biggest mistake new entrepreneurs make?
I give up too soon.
Okay. Have you ever failed before?
Have
you ever failed before?
Of course.
Of course. How did you overcome that failure?
Thick skin. Reset. Fix it. You figure out why you failed and fix it.
Okay. So usually when people fail, they usually give up. What made you continue and learn from your mistake?
I guess that's my personality, man. Drive. I wasn't going to give up. I knew my dreams. I had goals. I knew what to do to get them.
Okay. And one last question. What was the biggest advice you've gotten financially, life related, anything? What is the biggest advice you've gotten?
Like I said, man, just never give up. Just never give up. You get a goal, you get a dream, just shoot for it.
Who am I here with today?
Good afternoon. What's up? I'm Dr. Tracy Edward Smith, aka Tracy or Doc, if you check out my playbook, my podcast.
Yes, sir. Dr. Smith, this is a beautiful car you have. What do you do to be able to afford such a beautiful car?
So this is my baby. Her name is actually Gabriella. I always name all my Italian cars, but I'm actually I'm a doctor of psychology, but I'm retired military. I was a special agent in the Army. So if people have seen the show NCIS.
Yes.
So I was the Army's equivalent. We came before them, and we're cooler. We just didn't get the TV show. So anyway, I was a special agent with Army CID for 20 years. Worked murders, rapes, different types of crimes, counter drug stuff, executive protection. So I protected the Secretary of Defense like the Secret Service does the president. I did that, retired out of the Pentagon in 2007, the first time. I don't have kids, and I married smart. My wife, I met my amazing wife when I was teaching a salsa class in Washington, D.C. She was in med school at Georgetown, so my wife's an anesthesiologist. And we don't have kids, and she actually just, we've just owned several businesses. Our first business together, besides what we do for occupations, was the IV. You know how people use IVs for wellness? We had one of the first ones in the country. So we did that. We ended up selling it. We'd owned several businesses, and then went on. We published a book together, and just some other ventures. So I just stayed on my grind. And still grinding a little bit. Writing a couple of books now. Like I was telling you, we started a YouTube channel podcast. We'll hopefully have you guys on there one of these days.
Yes, sir.
And and still right now we own an anesthesia, a concierge anesthesia, and an anesthesia management company. And we're developing some medical software and hardware.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Very successful power couple, it sounds like. You
It's
mentioned.
a blessing. Yeah. And you know what? I can't leave that out, man. The key to my success really is God. Too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because if it weren't for God, after being in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was in the Pentagon on 9/11 when the plane ran into it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm still here having fun. So it's a blessing. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned you have multiple businesses with your wife.
Yes.
What is the most amount of money that you've been able to generate in a single year?
Ooh, probably a couple of million.
Couple million.
Yeah.
Casually,
Yeah.
couple million. Do you come from money at all?
I do not. My dad, I'm an Army brat, so My dad was a senior NCO in the military. He was in for 26 years. 3 tours of Vietnam, he passed away, but he was a great role model. My grandfather was a great role model. My mom's dad, he had like a 5th grade education and spoke perfect English and was the most classy, intelligent, graceful guy you'd ever meet. My mom, still alive. She actually worked for the government. She had a government career most of her life, and so we were just a black middle class family. My mom stressed education and getting a good job. As a mentor, because I don't have kids, I give kids as much advice as I can about like education and things like that, but also about alternatives in terms of entrepreneurial ventures, because sometimes, African Americans don't look at that because we don't have the safety nets to fail and still be able to feed our families.
Yes, sir.
But some of the most successful people I know are young business people. So that and like I said, it's been a blessing. I have 2 sisters. I have a sister 3 years younger than me. She's an accountant. She retired from the Department of Justice already, and she has a Stanley Cup ring because she was a cheerleader for the Capitals. And my baby sister is a doctor in social work in the wars, and she's had her own practice for like 16 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, so just a good examples. Great mom and dad, family, and just worked hard.
Yes, sir. One more question for you.
Yes, sir.
What would you say is the one thing separating people that are in poverty from people that are successful like you?
Well, besides God or their spirituality, probably just. Well, I don't take it for granted. That's why I say God. I don't say that just to toss it out there like people say it, but I think I was born with like a level of like discipline and focus and drive that sometimes people just don't have. And I think I was kind of born with it. And then my environment kind of nurtured that.
Yes, sir.
And my own personality. Like I'm the kind of guy that like, I was going to kill myself trying to outrun you in 2 miles. If I had to go running 3 times a day for 5 years to beat you, that's what I'm going to do. So,
Yes,
so I think that like determination and discipline is a huge part of it. And to not be scared to fail, but when you do fail, recognize that everybody fails. But there's no shame in failing. The shame is in not getting back up and continuing to try. So I think to be disciplined, focused, and to be driven to not accept failure. Yeah.
Who am I here with today?
My name is Sean Pinsky.
Sean Pinsky. Is this your McLaren?
This is McLaren 570S Spider. I actually just picked this vehicle up about a month ago. We're out here with a few of my other business partners. We have an exotic rental company called Move Tampa. We're partners with, some bigger names in the industry as well, such as PG Lux, TWM Exotics, and we really just work together to be able to do events just like this out here tonight. We have the cars on display for the younger kids to, give them the motivation and the manifestation that they need to get to the, to get to this level, when they're in their 20s and 30s.
Okay. And then, what is the most amount of money you've ever made in a single year off of this car rental?
Okay, off the car rental business. So full transparency, I just got into the business. This is my first month. This month, and not only is my first month, my vehicles just started, renting last week. And so the last week and this week, we're at about $6,000 to $8,000. I don't remember the exact number. I have an orange Huracan that is out this weekend. That brought in about $2,200. And obviously, if everything comes back good to go, it'll be $2,200. But if it comes back with any issues, we're gonna profit off the deposit as well. So it's definitely a profitable industry. You just have to find something. You have to figure out what's going to get you to this level, right? So no one can just go out and buy an exotic vehicle. Even when you get to the financing, they're going to look for, they're going to check not only your income and your credit score, but they're going to check for, comparable auto loans and other auto loans. And so, doing business for a while, for a few years to be able to purchase an exotic vehicle, that's what's required. And so, find your passion, find out, what problems you want to solve and, save. That'll allow you to purchase a vehicle. And then, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to figure out how to create something that's traditionally a liability, such as these vehicles, and create it into an asset and make it another business. And so that's one thing as a young entrepreneur. I always am just trying to find ways to continue to make more ways and make more businesses out of the things I have. And yeah,
And then, have you ever failed before?
Um, so I fail a lot in terms of like, I have a lot of, I make a lot of mistakes, and, I fail a lot in smaller things. Have I ever failed in terms of like a business idea that I've had not working out, or a business that I've opened closing? Never. No, I always meet the right people. I always consult the right people. I find the right mentors, and they always help me, multiply that with my work ethic and my discipline and the ambition that I have. There is no failure. Failure is not an option. But of course, I make small fails and mistakes every single day, but nothing catastrophic yet. And I don't think that I'll ever have to worry about that. With the people that I have in my circle, very blessed, and again, multiply that with some work ethic and some ambition. I don't think that's ever going to be anything I have to worry about.
Okay, okay. And then how big, like how impactful does your circle have to be?
Oh my gosh. If there is, that's probably the most important thing to becoming successful. And your circle is going to continue to level up. And probably, especially when you're just starting month after month after month. When I was in, think of yourself when you're in grade school, you look up to the older kids, and, you want what they have. And when they get their first cars, you want a car. And, then when you get to college, you look up to it continues to climb the people you look up to. And so, you have to continue to surround yourself with the people that have what you want, or people that are working to get what you want as well. So the inner circle is the most important factor to becoming successful. And like I said, that circle is going to continue to change your entire life. You're going to continue to outgrow people. You're going to continue to level up. And it's not a bad thing. You're supposed to change. You're supposed to level up. And so, yeah, your inner circle and continuing to grow your inner circle is the most important factor to becoming successful. That's my opinion based off my personal experience.
Who am I here with today?
Uh,
Is this your beautiful Ferrari?
it is.
Okay, what line of business are you in to be able to afford such a beautiful car?
I'm an industrial painting contractor. So we paint water and wastewater treatment plants from as far north as Pennsylvania, as far west as Texas.
Oh, wow. Well, Mr. Got you started in this business?
I kind of grew up working at a young age.
Yes, sir.
Started painting houses on the side. Kind of worked my way up in that business the way there was nobody else but family in that business. And then I decided to go out on my own. And I started my first painting company, but it failed within 3 years. Then I picked myself up, started another one. It didn't fail, but just kind of got tired of doing it. Then I actually went to work for a large contractor, and they kind of taught me the methods of business end of that business. So that company kind of compensated us with a huge bonus, but not so big salary. So I got recruited away from another company that came to Florida, opened a shop in Florida, and 6 months later that company sold, and they wanted me to relocate to Birmingham. I decided to stay, and that's how I started the business. That was 33 years ago.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Long time ago, sir. So in these 33 years, what is the most amount of money that your business has generated in a single year?
We're currently at probably our peak so far. We're doing about $1 million a month to $12 million a year. So,
what was the biggest reason why your business was from 6 to 7 figures?
well, all business is a roller coaster. I don't think if anybody tells you business is easy, they're lying, because business, I can tell you I've made and lost millions of dollars. I mean, I lost $2 million in 1 year, and I had to dig my way out of that. So, it's a constant challenge. It does get easier with people. People's got to be your primary asset. It's always got to be people, and it's also the most challenging, in my business, the most challenging aspect of it, because I have roughly 85 employees, and every one of them, I try to make sure they stay, because, we're a specialty trade. I train them, they learn the business, and then last thing I want is them to leave to go to a competitor. So they really got to be really messing up for us to get rid of them. They're that hard to find. Plus, it's like constant travel. Most of our crew is always on the road. So
Yes, sir. You mentioned that you lost $2 million before the year. You know, to a lot of people out there, they might see that as a big failure. How did you bounce back from that failure? And what is some advice you could give to the younger generation on failures and how to overcome them?
Well, the soundest advice I can tell you is you always have to have plan A, B, and C. Because plan A is what you like to see happen, but it never happens. Plan B is your fallback plan. Plan C is your last, you got to have at least 3 or 4 plans. And you got to be flexible to change. Because the economy changes, employees change, morale changes, everything changes. So you got to just be flexible and change. Another word of advice is the things that seem too good to be true always is. When I lost $10 million was because I had a very good customer of mine get me involved in a federal job, and it was a prototype. We were getting $500,000 a tank to paint the inside of the tanks. We did 2 tanks. The tanks leaked, had nothing to do with us, but we spent 3 years litigating it. And when it was all said and done, even I might have won the litigation, but I lost the war because of the amount of money I spent litigating it. So, I would say, always prepare for the worst. And when you get kicked down, you just got to pick yourself up and go back to it. Because you can't, as a long-term entrepreneur, there's no job out there to pay you what you can do on your own. But you got to have the tenacity and the patience and the know-how to get it done, and to stay with it.
Yes, sir. So, in your 33 years of being an entrepreneur, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten from somebody else, a book, a podcast, just in general, that you would shine on the younger generation?
Make a sound business plan. Try to. I know ultimately you want to have 90 days of cash flow in the bank before you do it. It's probably impossible to ever happen, but at least have a sound enough business plan to mitigate your cash shortfalls. So you got to stay ahead of that. Even at 33 years, I'm owed roughly $3 million right about now. So I even have cash shortfalls. Somebody didn't pay me this week for $150,000. So you can imagine that's causes cash shortfalls, even when you do $1 million a month.
I'm here with today.
My name's Keith.
Hey Keith, this is your Rolls Royce, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, what line of business do you do to afford this Rolls Royce?
I'm retired now, but I was a property manager, VRBOs, short-term vacation rentals, and now I'm a landlord.
Okay. And then, what's the most amount of money you've made in a single year?
I honestly don't know, but enough to buy probably 10 houses.
10 houses? So, you made enough to make 10 houses. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Just work hard. It took me 40 years to get it, what I did, and just work hard. Don't overstretch yourself, and just be in it for the long haul. There was no quick overnight gains in my line. See too many people, fall at the first hurdle. So play the long game.
Play the long game.
Yeah.
What is the biggest mistakes new entrepreneurs make?
I think over leveraging themselves.
Over leveraging. What do you mean by that?
They borrow too much money, or they borrow money, think it's going to be a quick earner, so they make a bit of money, they borrow again possibly, and then eventually they overextend themselves, and they can have like a house of cards and just all come tumbling down around them. And a lot of people you see are sort of, they're all flash, no cash.
Okay. And have you ever failed before?
Like what?
Have you ever failed before?
No, because I had a banking career when I lived in England, and here I've done property, and that's all I've really ever done.
You can't really fail in property.
No, if you're in it for the long haul and you buy them right and you look after them. I did all my own property management and maintenance and stuff, so I saved a lot of money there.
Okay. And then one last question: If I was to take everything away from you, would you be able to get it back?
At my time of life, it would be difficult, but yeah, I'm not scared to go work.
Who am I here with today?
So this is my name is Melvin Woodard, with owner of TWM Exotics.
Yes, sir.
In partnership with PG Lux and Move Tampa.
Mr. Melvin, what line of business? Sorry, I think you mentioned you do exotic car rental, but tell the people what that is if they don't know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So once again, I'm in the exotic rental car business. We rent out exotic cars, kind of just like this Lamborghini Urus, out to the general public. We do special events as well, but mainly what we do is we give people the experience of driving the ultimate adrenaline machine. And I think that's the Lamborghinis.
Yes, sir. So, Melvin, what is the most amount of money that you've made in a single year?
Yeah, in a single year. So I've been in this business since October of last year, and I'll say that probably my biggest month I made about 20 grand.
20,000. Okay. So, at what changed in your day to day life before making 20,000 to want you to take this risk to make this amount of money?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Midwest, and the reason why I moved down to Tampa anyways was to start a business, create financial freedom for myself, and do something that I'm passionate and something that I can enjoy. Exotic cars has always been something that I enjoy. I just didn't know how to monetize it. And so, just spending time on Instagram and watching other businesses, I knew this would be the perfect line of business for me. I jumped in head first, took the risk, found a mentor, and here I am.
Yes, sir. What goals would you say you have for your personal self and your business for 2025?
For 2025, definitely adding more cars to the fleet. Hopefully, have about 25 to 30 by the end of the year. Maybe have a second location with TWM Exotics. So it's all up from here. Mainly want to do exotic rental cars, maybe get into the boat rental space, but mainly it's just about the exotic car experience.
And what is one piece of advice you have for all the young entrepreneurs out there that are too scared to get started into starting their own business?
For all the young entrepreneurs out there that are looking to get started, failure is going to be your best friend. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is your stepping stone to success. Take the risk. Surround yourself with people that are going where you want to go. Right? Don't have any self-limiting mindsets. Always, always, always have that mindset that I'm going to get better, 1% better every day. Right? No matter what stands in my way, no matter what obstacles come my way, I'm determined to succeed and keep God first. Let me tell you that. That's the most important thing. Keep Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, as your King.